The fortress loomed against the pale moonlight, like a broken ribcage jutting from the earth. Its towers had long collapsed, leaving only jagged teeth of stone rising above the dark forest. To the locals, it was simply known as Kladovo Ruins. Place of Whispers, a place avoided after nightfall. Dr. Leila Morgan stood at the crumbled gate, her breath clouding in the sharp night air. She was used to ruins, had walked through the bones of castles, temples, and tombs across half the world, but this one unsettled her. The villagers' warnings echoed in her head. Don't go below. Don't listen if it calls. She adjusted her lantern and notebook, pressing forward across the cracked flagstones. Her boots crunched frost and gravel as she entered the ruin. What she sought was not above ground, but far beneath the dungeon carved into the rock itself, sealed for centuries. Leila had discovered the first mention of this dungeon in a forgotten 16th century manuscript while researching medieval prisons. The author had written of a corridor of chains, where prisoners were not executed, but bound by rites so cruel they were whispered to keep the dead from walking free. The account ended abruptly, as if even recording the words had invited. Misfortune. Her lantern's glow caught a half-buried stairwell. Stones pressed into the earth, like a throat swallowing her whole. She brushed aside weeds, uncovered the rusted iron gate, and pushed until it groaned open. The air that escaped was cold and damp, smelling of rot and rust. Lantern raised. She descended. The stairs wound steeply down, the walls slick with condensation. The deeper she went, the more the night sounds above, wind, owls, the creak of branches, faded until there was nothing. Her footsteps echoed in the silence, magnified by the narrow stone throat. At the bottom stretched a long corridor, flanked by cells on either side. The sight froze her breath. The stones were ancient but intact, the arches overhead holding steady. Despite centuries, the floor was cobbled, uneven and worn by the shuffling of countless feet. Iron bars stood in rows, cages yawning open into pitch-dark voids. Some doors hung open on broken hinges. Others were sealed shut, their locks rusted into grotesque shapes. Chains dangled from the ceilings, some snapped, others still fixed to the walls, as if waiting for wrists that would never return. She walked slowly, lantern light brushing the walls. Symbols were carved into the stone, not graffiti, not desperate. Scratchings, but deliberate markings. Circles with jagged lines, runes twisted around crosses, words in a language she didn't recognize. She bent close, copying one into her notebook. The silence pressed heavier the further she went. Every drop of water from the ceiling cracked like thunder. The air grew colder, so much so that her breath smoked. Halfway down the corridor, her lantern flickered. She froze, shielding it with her hand. No draft touched her face, yet the flame bent sideways, guttering as though blown by unseen breath. Her heart thudded. She told herself it was only the damp, only bad air. But when the flame steadied, again, she could swear she saw movement beyond the bars. A shape slumped in the corner of one cell. She swung the lantern toward it. Empty. Only a pile of stones and a rusted shackle. Get a hold of yourself, she whispered aloud, her voice startling in the silence. She pressed on. At the corridor's midpoint. Something caught her eye. A loose stone in the wall. She pried it free, and within the hollow lay a leather-bound journal, the pages stiff with age, but remarkably preserved. She held it reverently, brushing off dust. A name was scratched inside the cover. Thomas Varga, 1572. Leila sat on the cold floor, lantern beside her, and began to read. The handwriting was jagged, uneven, written by someone who had scratched words. In desperation. The first entry spoke of imprisonment. Thomas, accused of heresy, dragged to the fortress dungeons without trial. He begged forgiveness from God, pleaded for deliverance. But as the entries went on, His tone shifted. He wrote of rituals conducted at night, of guards who chained prisoners, not merely by wrists and ankles, but across their chests, necks, even their tongues, so they could not cry out. He wrote of the Warden, a man whose face was never seen, hidden, behind an iron mask. This Warden performed rites in a language Tomas could not understand, rites that made the prisoners scream until their voices broke, after which their bodies went still, but their eyes remained open. Leila's hands trembled as she turned the brittle pages. Tomas described one night when he saw chains glow red-hot, yet leave no burns, when he heard whispers not from men, but from the very stones. He wrote that the prisoners were not killed but bound, their souls shackled so their suffering could fuel something eternal. The final entry she read sent a shiver through her marrow. The chains do not hold the flesh, but the spirit. We are anchored here, even when our bodies rot. The Warden says we will guard the mask until the end of time. But I will hide this book, that someone may know, and perhaps, God willing, set us free. The chains will never let us go. Leila exhaled, clutching the journal to her chest. She had read accounts of torture, cruelty, superstition, but never anything like this. Then she heard it. A whisper, soft, almost too soft to catch, but undeniably real. A voice, low and hollow, echoing from the corridor ahead. It said her name, Leila. The lantern trembled in her hand. She stood quickly, swinging it toward the sound. The corridor was empty, vanishing into shadow. She turned the other way, only black cells staring back. Her mind raced. She had told no one she was coming here. No one knew her name in this place, yet the voice had been clear. Leila. This time it came from the cell beside her, chains rattling softly within the dark. Her breath hitched. She stepped back, her boots scraping the stones. Every instinct screamed to leave, to climb the stairs and never return. But something stronger held her. The journal, Tomas's desperate plea, the unanswered mystery of the mask and the Warden. Lantern high, she peered into the cell. The darkness peered back, and something moved. The shape inside the cell shifted again, then dissolved like smoke. Leila staggered back, clutching her lantern higher. Hallucinations, she whispered to herself. Stress, exhaustion. But the air told her otherwise. It had thickened, grown heavy, as though unseen eyes pressed in from every direction. The silence was no longer silence. It thrummed, pulsed, like a heartbeat buried in stone. She tightened her grip on Thomas Vargas' journal and forced herself to keep walking. Each step echoed, hollow and metallic, like the ring of chains. She stopped at a cell door, half hanging from its hinges. Inside, the walls were covered with scratches, not runes or sigils this time, but words, carved desperately with fingernails or shards of stone. She stepped closer, lantern held out. Free us. Free us. Free us. The phrase was repeated over and over in jagged rows, until the surface crumbled under the sheer weight of it. In one corner, fresher and deeper than the rest, another message. Warden wears the mask. The mask commands the chains. The mask holds the souls. Leila's pulse quickened. She flipped open the journal, searching for confirmation. Her lantern light wavered over the spidery handwriting until the words sharpened. The Warden comes each night. He does not speak as men do, but chants, and when he does, the chains stir like serpents. They burn our skin, but it is not the flesh. They seek it is the soul. Those taken do not die. Their bodies fall limp, but their voices remain. I hear them still, whispering in the dark. The whisper returned then, right beside her ear. Leila. She whirled, lantern raised. Nothing, only the corridor stretching into black. Her heart thundered, but she forced herself to turn another page. The ink was smeared, the words frantic. The mask of chains? Forged in secret, its iron mixed with the blood of martyrs. Whoever wears it commands us, commands the corridor itself. But the warden warns once worn, it cannot be removed without price. The chains bind master and prisoner alike. Leila swallowed hard. The implications were staggering. Was the mask a symbol? A tool of authority? Or something darker, an artifact? Of power? Her academic curiosity warred with instinct. Every rational bone in her body screamed to leave, to climb back up those stairs. Yet the historian within her, the seeker of truths long buried, refused. If Tomas's words were real, then this was no mere ruin. It was a prison of souls. She pushed deeper into the corridor. The air grew colder still. Her lantern's flame danced violently, though no draught stirred. Shadows seemed thicker than the light could pierce. As she passed another cell, she froze. A figure stood inside. It was skeletal, draped in tatters of cloth, wrists shackled high against the wall. Its skull tilted toward her, empty sockets glowing faintly with pale fire. Chains stretched across its chest, embedded in the stone itself, as if fused into both flesh and wall. Her throat tightened. She stumbled back, nearly dropping the lantern. The figure's jaw opened slowly. No sound came, only the faintest rattle of chains. Then, in her mind, a voice. Free. She gasped, clutching her head. The lantern shook, shadows leaping across the walls. When she looked again, the figure was gone. Only shackles remained, rusted and empty. Leila's breath came fast, shallow. She forced herself onward, one foot in front of the other. At last, the corridor ended. Before her loomed a heavy iron door, larger than the others, its surface carved with interlocking sigils. She pressed her lantern close and traced them with her fingers. The designs were intricate, layered protective seals, perhaps, or wards. In the center, an inscription in Latin, Custos Vinculorum, keeper of the chains. Her hand trembled. She knew this was what Thomas had written of the hidden chamber. The journal confirmed it. At the end of the corridor lies the chamber of chains. There the mask rests. The warden guards it, bound as we are bound, until another takes his place. None who enter return. None who wear the mask remain themselves. A cold dread rooted in her stomach. The rational world frayed at the edges, unraveling with every word. Yet still she turned the page. Tomas's final entry was scrawled with such force the quill had torn holes in the parchment. To those who find this, beware. The chains hold until the mask is worn again. Should the mask pass to new hands, the souls will awaken. They will not forgive the living. Better to let the corridor lie in silence forever. Leila's fingers traced the words. She closed the journal, her decision gnawing at her. Knowledge demanded she look. Instinct begged her to flee. Before she could decide, the sound came. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Metallic. The scrape of boots on stone. The drag of iron across the floor. Her lantern quivered as she turned. The corridor stretched long and empty behind her, but the sound echoed nearer, closer with every second. Chains rattled, faint at first, then louder. Leila's heart raced. She stumbled toward the great iron door, pressing her hands against the seals. The footsteps advanced, relentless, echoing through the stones as if the dungeon itself walked. She shoved. The door groaned, ancient hinges resisting. The sound of chains drew closer. Come on, she hissed, forcing all her weight against it. With a scream of metal, the door cracked open. She slipped inside, dragging it shut just as a shadow fell across the threshold. The door slammed. Silence returned. Her breath came in ragged gasps. She pressed her back against the cold iron, clutching her lantern and the journal tight. Then she turned. The chamber opened before her. It was vast, circular, its walls lined with chains that dangled from the ceiling like a forest of iron vines. The air shimmered faintly, heavy with a presence she could not name. In the center stood a stone pedestal, and upon it, illuminated by her trembling lantern, rested the object described in Thomas's journal, a mask of chains, iron, blackened. With age, its surface engraved with the same sigils she had seen on the door. Its eye holes were deep, empty voids, its mouth a jagged gash. Chains coiled across it, wrapped as though alive, pulsing faintly with light. Leila's knees weakened. She had found it. The artifact of nightmare and legend. The journal's final warning echoed in her mind. To command the damned is to join them. She swallowed hard, unable to tear her gaze away. The mask seemed to breathe, to wait. Then, from the iron door behind her, a sound. A thud. Then another. The scrape of chains. The growl of iron on stone. The warden had followed. The door shuddered. Leila froze, lantern clutched tight, as the iron behind her groaned under immense weight. Chains rattled in rhythm with the blows, echoing like thunder through the chamber. Thud, screech, the sound of something dragging across the stone floor outside. She backed toward the pedestal, heart hammering. The mask seemed to gleam faintly in her lantern's light, as though it had been waiting for her all along. Not real, she whispered. It's legend, folklore. The door slammed again, harder, the sigils glowing faintly red. Dust fell from the ceiling. Her denial crumbled. Something was coming. The chains along the chamber walls stirred. Slowly, like snakes waking from sleep, they swayed in the stale air. Links clinked together in whispers, and in the sound she heard faint voices layered atop one another. Release us, command us. Take the mask. She clapped her hands to her ears, but the voices pressed directly into her skull. Her lantern flame danced wildly, shadows writhing across the chamber like tortured souls. The journal slipped from under her arm and fell open on the floor. She glanced down at the torn page, words scrawled in desperation. The warden is no man. He is bound as we are, chained to the mask. He cannot leave until another takes his place. Leila's breath caught. Bound. The warden wasn't simply a figure of authority. He was the prison's slave, its eternal sentinel. The door cracked. A single chain whipped through, striking the floor with a shriek. The temperature plummeted. Frost crept over the pedestal's base. Her lantern dimmed. And then she saw him. The warden slipped through the gap like a shadow given weight. He was tall, impossibly so, his frame wrapped in heavy iron links that coiled around his arms, chest, and legs. His face was hidden beneath a half-broken iron mask, jagged, corroded, one eye hole dark and empty, the other burning faintly with ghostly light. His movements were deliberate, each step echoing with the scrape of chains. Though his head never lifted, she felt his gaze pierce her, freezing her in place. The chamber trembled as he entered fully, dragging behind him a mass of chains that slithered like living things. Leila's throat closed. Her instincts screamed to run, but there was nowhere left to go. Stay back. Her voice cracked, absurd in the vast chamber. The warden stopped. The chains surrounding him stilled. Then, slowly, he raised one hand and pointed toward the pedestal, toward the mask. The voices surged again. Wear it. Take it. The mask binds him. The mask frees us. The mask is power. She shook her head violently. No. The warden stepped closer. Each footfall rang like a tolling bell. The chains along the chamber walls lashed outward, striking the floor, sparks leaping in their wake. The voices shrieked, pleading, demanding, overlapping, until she could barely hear her own thoughts. Her lantern flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Only the faint glow of the Warden's single burning eye remained, hovering in the void. Her breaths came ragged, shallow. Blind, she scrambled backward until her fingers brushed the pedestal. The cold iron of the mask bit into her skin. The Warden stopped, waiting that her mind raced. If she wore it, she might command him, just as Thomas had written. But the cost? Cost was written in every warning. To wear the mask was to become bound. The Warden's chains scraped forward, curling like serpents ready to strike. No choice. She whispered. Her fingers closed around the mask. The moment she touched it, pain shot up her arm. Images exploded in her mind, faces twisted in agony, prisoners screaming, chains searing through flesh into bone. She saw souls ripped from bodies, dragged screaming into iron links. She saw the Warden himself, once a man, forced to don the mask centuries ago, his humanity stripped away until nothing remained but duty. The weight of countless souls crushed down on her chest. She gasped, nearly dropping it. The Warden's chains struck the pedestal, shattering stone. Sparks flew. With a cry, Leila lifted the mask to her face. The world imploded. She was standing not in the chamber, but in the corridor again. The cells stretched endlessly, but now every bar, every stone, burned with faint light. Figures stood within skeletal, eyeless, bound in chains. Hundreds of them, all staring at her. She staggered, clutching the mask to her face. Her vision blurred at the edges, as though she saw with two sets of eyes, hers and another's. The prisoners whispered, voices slithering together. You are Warden now. You command. Free us. Free us. Leila stumbled back, shaking her head. No, I'm not. The Warden appeared before her, chains lashing. He loomed taller here, more monstrous, his mask whole and gleaming. His voice rumbled like stone breaking. You have chosen. Command or be devoured. The prisoners rattled their chains, shrieking for freedom. Some stretched skeletal hands through the bars, others pressed their eyeless faces against the iron. Leila clutched the mask tighter. For the first time, she felt the chains obey her, bending faintly to her will. She raised her hand, and the prisoner's shackles trembled. The Warden's eye flared. He surged forward, chains whipping, striking the ground around her. She screamed, throwing out her arm. The chains recoiled, snapping taut as though she had pulled them herself. The prisoners howled in unison, rattling their cages. The Warden bellowed. In fury, lunging, the chamber snapped back into focus. Leila ripped the mask from her face, gasping, sweat pouring down her skin. The Warden froze mid-strike, chains trembling. The mask pulsed in her hands like a living heart. She could feel its hunger, its need to be worn, to bind her soul forever. She backed toward the far wall, clutching it away from her face. You won't take me, she whispered, half to the mask, half to the Warden. But the prisoners' voices shrieked in her skull. Wear it. Free us. You cannot escape. The Warden roared, chains crashing down like a storm. Leila dove aside, the iron links shattering stone where she had stood. She scrambled across the floor, grabbing the journal, her lantern forgotten. Her mind raced. What had Thomas said? How could it end? Her eyes landed on one last scribbled note, barely legible. Break the mask. Break the chains. End the Warden. She looked up at the iron monstrosity advancing on her. Her hands tightened around the mask. Warden raised his arm. The chamber shook, and Leila made her choice. The chamber roared with the sound of chains. Iron links writhed like serpents, striking the ground, sparking against stone. The Warden advanced, his broken mask glowing with ghostly fire, his single burning eye fixed on Leila. She staggered to her feet, clutching the mask of chains in both trembling hands. Its weight dragged at her soul. She could feel it whispering, begging her to wear it again. Bind them. Command them. Become Warden. No, she hissed, forcing the thought down. Not me. Never me. The Warden raised his arms. Chains slashed toward her in a deadly arc. Leila dove aside, rolling across the cold stone floor. The lynx struck where she had stood, gouging deep scars into the chamber's surface. Her lantern shattered under the blow, plunging the room into near darkness. Only the faint glow of the Warden's eye and the pulsing veins of light across the mask illuminated the chamber now. Her gaze fell on Tomas's journal, lying open on the floor. The words burned in her memory. Break the mask. Break the chains. End the Warden. She clenched her jaw. That was the key. The Warden struck again, chains whistling through the air. Leila ducked, the iron whip slicing just above her head. Sparks showered around her. She sprinted toward the pedestal, mask in hand. The Warden roared, a sound that shook the very stone. His chains lashed out, wrapping around her ankle, dragging her back. She hit the ground hard. Breath ripped from her lungs. The chain tightened, cold searing into her flesh, burning not skin, but something deeper, her spirit. She screamed, clawing at the links, but they would not budge. The Warden loomed above her, his voice like crumbling tombs. You are mine now. The mask in her hand pulsed violently, its whispers screaming in her skull. Wear me. Command him. Only I can save you. Tears stung her eyes. She knew if she gave in, she'd be lost. But without it, the Warden would consume her. Her mind raced. Break the mask. Break the chains. She looked up at the pedestal, the jagged stone where the mask had rested. If she could strike it there. With a cry, she raised the mask high and slammed it down against the stone. The chamber exploded in light. The mask cracked, a spiderweb of fractures racing across its surface. The Warden bellowed, chains convulsing like wounded beasts. The link around her ankle snapped open, releasing her. Leila scrambled to her feet, lifting the mask again. The prisoners screamed within the walls, their voices rising into a cacophony of agony and rage. For centuries they had been bound, and now their bonds strained to breaking. Finish it. She slammed the mask again. The iron split wider, a piece flying free. Chains whipped wildly through the chamber, smashing into walls, shattering stone. The Warden staggered, clutching his own mask, cracks spreading across it in unison. Leila raised it a third time, shouting with all her strength. For Tomas. For all of you. She brought it down with every ounce of power she had. The mask of chains. Shattered. The effect was instant. Every chain in the chamber erupted in blinding light. The prisoners' screams rose into a single thunderous wail that shook the fortress. Above, shackles burst, links dissolving into dust. The corridor outside thundered as cell after cell released its prisoners, not into flesh, but into freedom. The Warden convulsed, his body writhing under the glow. Cracks split across his iron shell, light pouring from within. He roared in fury and pain, reaching toward Leila with one last, desperate strike, and then he exploded into ash, chains disintegrating around him. The chamber fell silent. Leila collapsed. To her knees, gasping, tears streaming down her face. The shattered fragments of the mask lay scattered across the floor, glowing faintly before crumbling into dust. The oppressive weight in the air lifted. For the first time since entering the dungeon, she could breathe freely. She looked around. The chains along the walls were gone. The voices had fallen silent. The prisoners, those countless souls, had been released. She let out a shuddering laugh, half sob, half relief. It was over. Or so she thought. A sound broke the silence, not chains, not whispers. A single word, etched in the stones themselves. Thank you. It came not from one voice, but from many, layered in harmony. the gratitude of the freed. Leila smiled weakly. You're free now. But then, beneath the thanks, another voice stirred. Deeper, darker. The chains are broken. But the mask endures. Her head snapped toward the fragments. They were gone. Only dust remained. The chamber began to tremble. Cracks split the walls, stones falling from the ceiling. The fortress above groaned, ancient supports finally giving way. Leila bolted for the iron door, clutching Tomas's journal. She sprinted through the collapsing corridor, stones crashing around her, dust choking the air. The stairs appeared ahead. She scrambled upward as the dungeon roared in collapse. Chains fell from the ceiling like rain, striking the ground, shattering into sparks. She burst into the cold night air just as the earth convulsed. Behind her, the fortress collapsed inward, the dungeon swallowed whole in a storm of stone and dust. Leila fell to the ground outside, coughing, shielding her head as the ruins crumbled. When the silence returned, the fortress was gone. Only a jagged pit remained, smoking faintly under the pale moonlight. She sat there for a long time, trembling. Tomas's journal clutched to her chest. At last, she opened it, staring at the final page. The words were different now. Written in fresh ink, in handwriting not her own. The mask will find another. Her blood ran cold. She slammed the book shut, staring into the night. The ruins were gone, the souls freed, but the curse had not ended. Somewhere, somehow, the mask still lingered, waiting.